Good evening. My name is Kenneth Laffler. I'm a graphic artist and I also play the drums. I'm not a person who is prone to making up things, seeing things. I don't believe in the paranormal. I think it's nonsense. But for the last 2 years, what I've experienced at 23871 Via Astuto have changed my mind. I have a show on YouTube which has done quite well. It debunks the paranormal. I've done shows on the Key Mill in Murrieta, which is the seventh most haunted site in the United States. I've done shows on the Naval Academy in Lake Elsinore, the Country Club, the Chimes House, which is supposed to be haunted by a child who drowned in the swimming pool in 1935, the hotel next to it, and several other sites. Also the Hartford Springs County Mines, which also has stories of the paranormal. After all that research, I still do not believe in it. But what I experienced for 2 years since my mother's passing on September 2nd in that house have been beyond belief. I kept trying to convince myself that I was just imagining it, but everybody I knew who came in that house had very strange experiences. The feeling of a presence there, seeing people in the house, seeing people staring in through the windows. One time I was in the back room. I heard a lady and her son enter the living room. I grabbed a 12-string guitar and ran down the hallway. When I got in the living room, there was no one there. I ran down the walkway to the street and looked both ways. There was not time for them to have ducked under cover. But I vividly heard these voices. And as I say, I am not prone to exaggeration. About 6 months ago, a female friend of mine spent the night for the weekend for 3 days. I had been imagining that someone was sitting on the bed when I woke up talking to me. This happened about every 3 days and had been for several years, at least a year and a half, getting worse and worse as time passed. What she told me was terrifying. She said I kept sitting up in bed all night and speaking to someone in that room, that back awful room. She said they were vivid conversations. She did not hear anybody else talking, but she said they were clear and coherent conversations with somebody in that room as if I was talking to someone. This I had experienced all the time. I would wake up all the time and someone would be there speaking to me at least 3 times a week. She also said she took pictures of me, and she said there were images in them. She would not let me see the pictures. She said they were just too frightening. When the incident with the audio recording happened, I contacted her again. I hadn't spoken to her for about a month or so. I asked her, "Did you have any experiences in that house?" She said, "Yes, constantly." I sent her the copy of the tape. I said, "Would you please listen to this?" She called me back and seemed perfectly calm and said this type of thing occurred all the time while she was staying there. Another girlfriend of mine came over one day. We went over to have some Mexican food and came back. When I opened the garage door, she stopped on the threshold and stood there with a look of absolute terror. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "There's a presence in this house." I said, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, "There is a presence here and it is clear." She also was not someone prone to exaggeration and really did not believe in the paranormal. She would not go any further into the house. When my mother was alive, we would go out in the backyard and smoke cigarettes. We both smoked and would not smoke in the house. After her passing, I simply could not bring myself to go in that backyard. I never went out there for 2 years. One day in my bedroom, I distinctly heard two men talking in the living room. The house was sealed again. When I went out there, and as I say, I never went in the backyard. The door to the backyard was always locked with a deadbolt. When I came out there, the men weren't in the room, but the door to the backyard was wide open. As I said, I never opened this door ever after her passing. There was also the incident where someone entered my room and tried to suffocate me. This incident was so horrific, it has left me shaken to this day, and I have never forgotten the terror of that incident. Someone entered that room when the house was completely locked. All windows were sealed. Garage door was locked. They took 3 keys and 3 locks to get into any entrance. It was impossible for anyone to enter. Someone came into my room and stood over me with a pillow and did this 4 times, trying to suffocate me. I entered a state of sleep paralysis where my eyes were open, but I couldn't speak, and stared into their eyes. This happened 4 times as they loomed over me while I was laying there and couldn't move. They were wearing a pair of goggles. 2 years prior to this, I had lost a pair of swimming goggles and had not seen them ever. When I awoke from this terrifying incident, or came out of it, the goggles were sitting there on my desk. Several days later, all communications failed in that house simultaneously, and they were all on different grids and systems. Cell phones, computers, TV, any means of communication with the outside world were completely shut off. And I have no explanation for this. 2 weeks after this, while I was still completely shaken by the incident, someone drugged me at one of my shows. The police report came back that I had been drugged with Special K. Special K is phenobarbital. I haven't taken phenobarbital in years. I used to in the 80s because I used to have cluster headaches, which were excruciating, but they eventually went away, and I had never taken phenobarbital again, seeing it was a highly addictive drug. The police report said they believed that I had been drugged at one of my shows by someone. Did this have to do with the communications failures? Several hours later, I was hit by a drunk driver right outside of the colony at Jackson and Nutmeg. Anyone can check the police reports. Sergeant Baca was the officer in charge. He was very kind and asked me how my mother was. I told her she had passed away, and he was very shaken by this. The police did not pursue any charges of any negligence on my part, and I was released OR with an apology from them. I think they're a very fine police department. And there was the incident where I audio taped someone speaking to me in that back room, that horrible back room. I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't get it on tape or on a recording. I was playing my guitar. These incidents usually happen around 12 o'clock. I would suddenly get a feeling of absolute terror and felt I had to flee that residence. I must have dozed off and was playing still, if one can believe that, when 2 shapes entered the room. One was a girl with yellow hair, with a yellow dress, and she was smiling. Her teeth were made of metal and brushed steel, and she stood there smiling at me through those horrible teeth, while her male companion spoke to me. My previous videotape has this recording, and if someone can explain this, I have a cold. I would like to hear the explanation. I would be more than happy to take a lie detector test. As they spoke to me, I told the person who was speaking to get the fuck out, which you can hear on the audio tape. The voice runs over mine. There was no way for anyone to get in that house. All doors were bolted. All windows were shut, and I thoroughly checked everywhere in that house to see if anyone was in there prior to this recording. Even the closet by the door, even underneath the furniture in the dining room. There was no one in the house. Yet that voice runs over mine. There is no explanation for this. As I say, I will be glad to take a lie detector test. I lived in that house for 15 years and had never experienced anything like this until my mother died in my arms in that small bedroom off the living room and the kitchen. The only thing I had experienced that was terrifying were neighbors who were so vicious they felt it was okay for a 300-pound man to attack a 130-pound man because he was practicing his instrument at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, who happens to be a professional musician and is allowed to do that under the sound laws. And a community who was so mean that I actually had to show my driver's license when I went to play pool or go out to use the jacuzzi, and was harassed constantly on a daily basis every time I came out of that house. And all this after doing years of community service for the colony, doing free shows, going down, helping them with their practices, being the drummer for them, playing guitar. This was the thanks that I got from the colony. Anyone wishing to speak with me, I'll be more than happy to. My name's Kenneth Laffler. I also go by the name Andrew West professionally now. Part of this is because of what went on in that house. That was why I changed my name. It was the feeling of sheer terror. My phone number is 657-347-4493. I will be glad to talk to anyone who would like to about what went on for 2 years in that house of horrors. And I certainly hope no one has to experience that again. Thank you. Also, after having been severely burned when I was younger, in my 20s, I would like to ask anyone to donate to the Children's Burn Foundation at Johns Hopkins in Maryland. This is a very worthwhile cause,